The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about. Maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could too.
What happens when the self-appointed queen of moral outrage meets two people who actually did their homework? Sunny Hostin thought she was untouchable behind The View's desk, delivering her daily dose of righteous fury to millions of adoring fans. But what she didn't expect was Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly showing up with receipts, timelines, and the kind of cold facts that make carefully crafted narratives crumble like wet cardboard. This wasn't just another media spat. This was intellectual warfare, and Sunny walked into battle armed with nothing but buzzwords and that signature smirk. By the time the smoke cleared, she looked like someone desperately searching for the emergency exit while her credibility lay scattered across the floor. The buildup had been simmering for months, but nobody saw the explosion coming quite like this. Sunny had gotten comfortable in her echo chamber, surrounded by nodding heads and applause tracks, delivering moral lectures without anyone daring to push back. She'd perfected the art of selective outrage, turning social justice into a subscription service where passion was currency and truth took a permanent back seat. But comfort breeds carelessness, and when real scrutiny finally arrived, it came with surgical precision that left no room for escape routes.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women, they are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
Picture this, November 2024, election night, and the results are rolling in like a freight train heading straight for The View's worldview. Sunny Hostin, faced with Trump's victory, decided the best explanation was to blame uneducated white women and other voters who didn't fit her definition of enlightened. Not economic anxiety, not policy preferences, not genuine concerns. No, according to Sunny, millions of Americans were just too stupid to vote the right way. What we did not have is white women who voted about 52% for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women is my understanding, she declared, with the kind of condescending tone usually reserved for scolding toddlers. The mask didn't just slip off, it flew across the room and shattered. Here was someone who claims to champion equality, casually writing off millions of voters as intellectually deficient because they didn't make the choice she wanted. But here's the kicker. While she was busy insulting working class Americans as uneducated, Charlie Kirk was already pulling together receipts that would expose just how out of touch this accusation really was. Here's a woman who went to Notre Dame Law School, makes millions on The View, lives in a mansion, and has her son at Harvard University. Yet somehow she positioned herself as the voice of the oppressed while insulting entire demographics on national television. Social media erupted with working Americans sharing their stories, their degrees, their experiences, all while being labeled uneducated by someone who'd never spent a day doing the jobs that keep the country running. Teachers, nurses, mechanics, small business owners, people with advanced degrees and life experience that Sunny couldn't begin to understand from her ivory tower.
The founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis. But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away.
While Sunny was insulting half the country, The View had stepped in another massive controversy with Turning Point USA, making false statements that linked the conservative student organization to neo-Nazi demonstrators. What followed was a masterclass in how to make a major media outlet eat crow in public. Charlie Kirk didn't just get mad, he got legal. The accusations were as reckless as they were false. The View suggested that TPUSA welcomed neo-Nazi demonstrators at their Tampa summit, when those demonstrators had actually shown up in opposition to the event. But facts don't matter when you're in moral panic mode and desperately need a villain. The View's research team apparently consisted of whoever could Google fastest and jump to the most damaging conclusions. Kirk's response was different. He lawyered up and made it clear there would be consequences for lying about 5,000 students. The threat worked. The View was forced to issue an on-air apology, basically admitting they'd gotten the whole story wrong. But Kirk wasn't satisfied. "We're not going to let this go," he said, "because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just walk away." The forced apology became a symbol of something larger, the moment when mainstream media's authority started cracking under its own bias. When a conservative student group could force ABC News to publicly admit they'd lied, it sent shockwaves through an industry that had gotten comfortable operating without consequences.
Amazing. She's specifically there referring to the women, but of course it's the non-college educated men as well who voted for Donald Trump. And the nerve of this woman to whom the country has given so much to try to dump on people who didn't go to college. Look at you. Look at your achievements. How do you like the so-called uneducated now, son?
Sunny Hostin I think she went to Binghamton undergrad, and she went to Notre Dame Law School, which is a great law school. Her son right now is at Harvard. That son she wants us to think is sitting there oppressed, who she's got to fight on behalf of because America is so awful to him. They're educating him right now at Harvard University. And Jason, would you take a look at this? Because I'm going to guess, I haven't been to your house down in Tennessee, but I'm going to guess it doesn't look like this. This is Sunny Hostin's home in this shitty country that she can't stand, that doesn't treat black people like Sunny well. She let People magazine feature her home. Look at this dump. This country sucks. She went to Notre Dame Law School. She makes millions on The View. Her son's at Harvard. I'm sure her daughter's at private school on her way to some Ivy League. This is where Sunny lives. And F off, America. I can't stand how you've kept us all in chains. That's her messaging.
Enter Charlie Kirk, and suddenly the playing field shifted completely. While Sunny was throwing emotional grenades, Kirk showed up with preparation. This wasn't some random pundit looking for a viral moment. This was someone who'd done the homework and was ready to methodically dismantle every weak point in Sunny's carefully constructed image. Kirk's approach was surgical. He didn't attack Sunny personally, he attacked her credibility systematically. Every claim she made about conservatives, about Trump voters, about American politics, Kirk had numbers, examples, and contradictions ready to deploy. When she called working Americans uneducated, he pointed out the irony of someone living in extreme privilege lecturing people who actually build the infrastructure she depends on. The beauty of Kirk's strategy was its simplicity. He wasn't trying to outshout anyone or win points for dramatic sound bites. He was building a case, piece by piece, showing how Sunny's entire media persona was built on quicksand. Her outrage wasn't principled, it was partisan. Her concern for justice wasn't consistent, it was convenient. Her moral authority wasn't earned, it was assumed. What made Kirk's takedown so devastating was how calm and methodical it was. He wasn't angry or emotional, just relentlessly factual. Every time Sunny tried to reframe the narrative, Kirk was there with another receipt, another timeline, another example of contradictions. It was like watching someone try to plug holes in a dam while water kept finding new cracks to exploit.
Do you think if a liberal came to speak at University of Kentucky, they'd give an open mic like I just did to a conservative and had a discussion like this?
I certainly hope they would.
No, they wouldn't, because speech is not a left-wing value. That is why they have to deploy shock troops called Antifa to go after everywhere I go. When I go to University of California, Davis next week, there has to be 120 police officers because of the threats, the violent threats of liberals that want me dead, that want to disrupt our events. There are no right-wing hecklers that come to events like this. I think it's rather clear there's one side that is trying to do everything they can to shut one side up, and one side that's trying to open up the marketplace of ideas. And I think that's rather
Just when things couldn't get worse for Sunny, Megyn Kelly entered like a surgeon walking into an operating room. Where Kirk brought the sledgehammer of facts, Kelly brought the scalpel of precise analysis. Kelly's response wasn't petty revenge. It was professional demolition executed with calm precision that made it impossible to dismiss. Kelly's approach was different but equally devastating. She didn't need to raise her voice or present charts. She simply highlighted contradictions in Sunny's positions with the patience of someone who'd been watching this performance for years, and finally decided to call it out. Kelly had the advantage of understanding how the media game was played and knowing exactly where to apply pressure. The genius of Kelly's strategy was letting Sunny's own words do the damage. Rather than attacking directly, Kelly would play clips, read quotes, and ask obvious questions that Sunny's audience should have been asking all along. Why does your outrage only activate when politically convenient? Why hold conservatives to standards you never apply to liberals? Kelly understood that the most effective way to expose a performance isn't to compete with it, but to remove the stage lights and let everyone see what's really there. She didn't need to be louder or more emotional than Sunny. She just needed to be more honest, more consistent, and more willing to acknowledge uncomfortable truths.
Sunny Hostin over at The View had some choice words for Brittany Mahomes, who's married to the other Mahomes guy who plays for the Chiefs. She had the temerity to like a Trump post online, and she's been taking shit for it ever since. She wound up posting this defensive tweet saying, God, people are like, you got to settle down, like go be a better person and don't jump all over people for just random stuff. And here's Sunny Hostin weighing in on it.
Since she is in an interracial marriage, she should have known that to support a racist is problematic. Her children are biracial, and her family is one of the families that in the 70s could not have lived in any of Donald Trump's buildings. So
Sunny Hostin of The View finds out that this is fantastic. She is descended from slaveholders. Here's what she said when she went out on The View.
Really reluctant to do it because I just sensed that there could be something in my family history that would be disappointing. But what I found out was that my mother's family, while they are Puerto Rican, they actually originate from Spain. And the reason that they moved to Puerto Rico is because the slave trade had been sort of canceled in Spain and then Curacao, and then they moved all of their slaves to Puerto Rico. And so the family business, I had been told that they were printers and journalists.
Then came the revelation nobody saw coming, not even Sunny herself. During a segment about genealogy, Sunny discovered something that would completely undermine years of moral grandstanding. Her own ancestors were slave owners. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The discovery happened during what was supposed to be a feel-good segment about family roots. Sunny had been reluctant to do it because I just sensed that there could be something disappointing, she admitted. That instinct proved devastatingly accurate. Her mother's family had moved to Puerto Rico specifically to continue the slave trade after it was banned in Spain. The family business she'd been told were printers and journalists turned out to be something far more sinister. The revelation was devastating because of how completely it contradicted the narrative she'd been selling. For years, Sunny had positioned herself as the victim of systemic racism, the voice of the oppressed. But suddenly, she wasn't just connected to historical injustices, her family had profited from them. The oppressor wasn't some distant boogeyman, it was her own ancestors. What made this even more awkward was how Sunny tried to handle it. Instead of showing humility about the complexity of history, she attempted to reframe the discovery as somehow validating her previous positions. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level, but they only highlighted how disconnected from reality her arguments had been. The final phase wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was quiet, methodical, and ultimately more devastating than any screaming match could have been. As Kirk and Kelly continued their systematic dismantling, something interesting happened. The noise started to fade. The righteous fury that had powered Sonny's career began to look hollow when compared to calm, factual analysis. What Kirk and Kelly understood is that you don't beat manufactured outrage by creating more outrage. You beat it by refusing to play the game, staying calm, sticking to facts, and letting contradictions become obvious. They didn't need to shout louder than Sonny. They just needed to be more honest and consistent. The effectiveness became clear in how Sonny's responses evolved. Early on, she was defiant and confident her usual tactics would work. But as factual challenges mounted and contradictions became harder to ignore, her responses became more defensive, desperate, and less convincing. The performance that worked in friendly environments looked obviously scripted under real scrutiny. The real victory wasn't destroying Sonny's career or silencing her voice. The victory was demonstrating an alternative approach to commentary, one based on facts rather than feelings, consistency rather than convenience, and honest analysis rather than partisan performance. They showed it's possible to challenge bad ideas without personal attacks and win arguments by being right rather than being loud. In the end, this became a case study in the power of preparation and calm analysis over emotional manipulation. Sonny had built her career assuming passion plus platform equals authority, but Kirk and Kelly proved authority comes from being accurate, honest, and applying the same standards regardless of political affiliation. When those approaches collided, there was never really any contest about which would survive.